Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Our feature tonight is Tom Petty, who died recently at the age of 66, one of America's top rockers. He was the leader and founding member of Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, and it's hard to characterize their music. Somebody said it was an updated Creedence Clearwater John Fogerty type thing. There was a little bit of southern rock to it, a little bit of swamp rock, some country, and some pop. It was an all-American sound. Tom Petty came out of Gainesville, Florida, with one of Florida's most successful groups in the early 60s, Mudcrutch. Here he talks about the early days.
Elvis was like, before the Beatles, my picture of Elvis was the American dream. I mean, this was a kid from the South who had broken all the rules, had become his own man, and sort of looked like he did whatever he wanted, whether adults liked it or not. That was kind of the picture I had. But that didn't look like something you could be to me. And to be Elvis, no one's ever pulled that off. I mean, you'd have to be Elvis. You'd have to look like that for one thing, and you'd have to, orchestras would have to come out of the shrubbery and appear on the beach. Like that just doesn't happen. But the Beatles, that looked like something that could be done. These people look like they're self-contained. They're making music that they wrote themselves. The music's all there on the stage. They're playing it. And they look like they're really good friends and they're having a lot of fun. And I'll bet they're not worried about Brad either. Of course, they were so absolutely genius, like they were so good even in 64 that it seemed like really hard to ever reach that kind of musicianship. But then you saw the Stones come on there not much long after that, and you went, that I can do. I can do that. They were grittier, it was raw. They were playing blues in this really energetic kind of raw way, but it wasn't complicated. There wasn't a lot of beautiful harmony involved. It was sort of my punk music. It was like, that can be done. Apparently, tens of thousands of American musicians had the same thought at the same time. You won't meet anyone my age that's playing that didn't have that thought at that time. So you literally would hear this music coming out of garages as you drove around town. This little town in Gainesville, we must have had 50, 60 bands. I mean, there were so many bands and so many places to play. It was a great time, Now, if you're a band, it's really tough to find places to work or places to play. It's changed so much. I remember when we were a working band, like when Mudcrutch was just a working band, like we had to work all the time in order to eat, And disco suddenly changed over to cats that just played records, and the bands were out of work. And we were so insulted, like, what? You mean we've been fired for a guy that plays records? But that was the first wake-up call, to, wow, there's a lot of gigs being taken away. If you want to keep working, you're going to have to get better and better and better.
Around this time, he was studying guitar with future Eagles guitarist Don Felder. They definitely got better, and by the late 70s, they had gone out to LA, they'd been to England, and they became one of the best rock bands of the last third of this century. Let's take a listen to some of their best songs. Again, this is another situation where you can't play all of Tom Petty's best stuff. Well, as disco was dying at the end of the 70s, the Heartbreakers' career was taking off, but then a legal battle arose when Tom Petty tried to renegotiate his contract after MCA bought ABC, and by 1979 he filed for bankruptcy. 9 months of litigation, and then he signed to Backstreet Records, a new MCA affiliate. His triumphant return, Damn the Torpedoes, hit number 2, selling over 2.5 million copies, and established Tom Petty as a star. And he had 2 great singles from that album. The first was this one, which hit number 10 in 1979. Don't Do Me Like That.
I was talking with a friend of mine, said a woman that hurt his pride, told him that she loved him so, and turned around and let him go. Then he said, you better watch your step, or you're gonna get hurt yourself. Someone's gonna tell you lies, cut you down to size. Don't do me like that, don't do me like that. What if I love you, baby? Don't do me like that.
Second one went to number 15 in 1980, and I think this is my favorite Tom Petty song, Refugee.
It don't really matter to me, baby. Everybody's at the fight to be free. Say no. Hey, feel like a refugee. Don't have to live like a refugee. No, you don't. Feel like a refugee. Don't have to live like a refugee.
Here's one that a lot of people like. David Letterman called this his favorite because it reminded him of his home in Indiana. Mary Jane's Last Dance.
Oh, hell yes, you got to put on that party dress. It was too cold to cry when I woke up alone. I hit my last number, I walked to the road. Last dance with Mary Jane. One more time to kill the pain. I feel something creeping in and I'm tired of this town again.
Here's my son-in-law Jeff's favorite, Free Fallin'.
I'm a bad boy for breaking her heart. Now I'm free, free falling. Yeah, I'm free, free falling.
Remember when Tom Petty was talking about the Beatles early on? Well, he became a big enough star that George Harrison visited his house. And when he left his guitar at Tom Petty's house and went back to retrieve it, George Harrison asked him to become part of a new supergroup he was forming along with Jeff Lynne, Bob Dylan, and Roy Orbison. And that's how Tom Petty became part of the Traveling Wilburys.
Well, it's alright as long as you lend a hand. You can sit around and wait for the phone to ring, waiting for someone to tell you everything. Sit around and wonder what tomorrow will bring. Maybe you're down the lane.
In 2002, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, introduced by Bob Dylan's son Jacob.
The first time that I spent any time with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers was in 1986. And that was not the first tour that I'd been on, but it was certainly the most excited I'd been. I was already a huge fan, and I definitely plan on watching every moment from the side of the stage, which I did. I remember sitting with his daughters. I remember thinking, Jesus, your dad is Tom Petty. They truly are one of the great American rock groups. Tom has written songs that you will never forget. From American Girl to Refugee to Free Fallin'. And all of his songs are bursting with his unique spirit. It is my great pleasure to welcome them into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Ladies and gentlemen, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers.
I am truly humbled to be added to this list of people in this hall that have meant so much to my life. The music overcame me at a very early age and has consumed my life. I love everything about it, all the people I've met, the great times I've had. I'm very proud that we're being inducted as a group, as Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, because they're the best band in America. I am not always a summer breeze. And I thank this rock and roll for the freedom it's given me. And I thank the fans for such a wonderful life. And I thank God for all of it. God bless you. Thank you very much.
Finally, this is a song he played in a primetime telethon-style benefit concert for the victims of and first responders to the attack on the World Trade Center that aired a couple of weeks after 9/11. This is I Won't Back Down.
Well, I won't back down. No, I won't back down. You can stand me up at the gates of hell, but I won't back down. No, I'll stand my ground. Won't be turned around. And I'll keep this world from dragging me down. Gonna stand my ground. And I won't back down.
Well, we're going to move on now to Arthur Janov, who died recently at the age of 93. He was a PhD psychotherapist who developed primal therapy. The idea that all your mental traumas and psychological traumas emanate from birth and from childhood. It was really new age stuff in the 70s. Of course, he was down in Southern California. It really caught on with his book about the primal scream. You'd have people just screaming their lungs out. And any of that New Age stuff down there in Malibu needed the big gun celebrities to promote it, and he had some of the biggest guns in John Lennon and Yoko Ono. They started doing the scream, and John Lennon started writing songs about his mother. You can trace a lot of their early 70s music to that primal therapy stuff, but eventually they had a falling out with Dr. Janov. That 1970s Southern California psychotherapy stuff was one step away from, how shall we say, quite questionable. Much of it's been discredited today, but here's Arthur Janov talking about what primal therapy was.
I'm going to talk a little bit about what primal therapy is. It's gone into many incarnations over the years, but basically it means that we have needs that we're all born with, and that when those basic needs are not met, we hurt, and when that hurt is big enough, it's imprinted in the system, it changes our whole physiologic system, and then what our therapy does is go back to those early brains, the hurt brain, and relive the pain and get it out of the system, because meanwhile the pain is being held in storage and just waiting for its exit, so to speak. So primal therapy was a way of accessing our feeling brain and down below even the feeling brain into the brainstem to get to all the hurts that started very early in our lives and bring them up to consciousness for connection and integration. And it's a very systematic therapy. It's paced by the patient. The patient decides when he comes and when he leaves and how long he stays. There's no 50-minute hour anymore. And it's just the feelings of the patient determine when he stops. And what we found a way to do is to go back to those times and relive those pains and put them back into connection and integration in the system. And so when you have all those pains that are held in storage, as it were, it causes tension and anxiety and depression, all that kind of stuff. And so what we found a way to do is go little by little, step by step, down the ladder toward deep feeling and get it out of the system. Once we do that, things clear up, from migraine to high blood pressure, from sometimes epilepsy, to all kinds of ailments. What I think primal therapy is doing is different, is that instead of pushing back feelings with tranquilizers and drugs, we let the feelings out. It seems to me the most logical thing to do. So that instead of tranquilizing feelings, we're liberating them. And that's a big difference. I think most of psychotherapy is talk therapy or insight therapy or therapy with words. And primal therapy has found that it's not words necessarily that we need to go to. In other words, we need to talk to a brain that doesn't talk, that feels. And we have found a way to go to that brain that doesn't talk, but that feels, and talk to it in feeling terms, and then let it communicate itself to the therapist. And that seems to be, I think, one of the great advancements in psychotherapy today.
I don't know. You start talking about curing migraines and hypertension and epilepsy with primal therapy. I'd keep my hand on my wallet if I were you. Well, I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. And we're going to close tonight with Ludmila Belousova, who died recently at the age of 81. She and her husband, Oleg Protopopov, were longtime skating partners from the Soviet Union and were the greatest figure skaters in the world in the 1960s. They were the 1964 and 1968 Olympic champions, 4-time world champions, and 4-time European champions. Figure skating was a big deal in the Soviet Union during the Cold War, especially until the 1970s, but it eventually fell out of favor, as did the Protopopovs, and Ludmila Belousova and her husband emigrated to Switzerland and ultimately to the United States, where they did charity events, skated in the ice capades, and taught other skaters. They created the backward inside, and forward outside death spirals, which they originally named the Cosmic Spiral, Life Spiral, and Love Spiral, respectively. They're still performed in pairs competitions today. Their refined, unified, and graceful presence captivated everyone who watched them skate. As I said, they won the gold medal in Innsbruck in 1964 and in Grenoble in 1968, and to honor Ludmila Belousova, we will play a little bit of the Moonlight Sonata, which they skated to for the gold medal in Grenoble.